Hi, welcome to the Protected by Purpose podcast. This is your host, Dorinda Walker, author of the acclaimed book, Protected by Purpose. And today I have the honor and privilege of having Tray Kearney as my special guest. Trey is a certified life and relationship coach, but there is so much more to Trey than that. So welcome, Trey.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be your first guest. I am humbled and honored. Thank you so much.
Well, when I said I wanted to launch this podcast, I said I have to have Trey on this podcast. So
I'm just emotional about that. But
yeah.
Thank you so much.
So to all the listeners, you are in for a treat. So you are so much more than your title. But before we get to the woman you are today, tell me about 18-year-old Trey. What she aspired to be, what type of obstacles she had in her life, and just what was her outlook on life.
18-year-old Trey was trying to get out of her mother's house because it was dysfunctional, and that's why we're here. So my aspirations, I really didn't have any because I didn't have any direction. And I talk about that all the time, like after we are adults and our parents set us free, nobody teaches us life skills. They say go to college, get a trade, but nobody tells us what to do. And I had a very dysfunctional mother, so college wasn't an option. You know, I barely got through high school. So I really wanted to be an ice skater. I really, really loved ice skating, and I used to watch it all the time and have dreams of ice skating, but I've never, ever been ice skating.
So we have something in common.
Oh.
Well, I've been ice skating. So one of my aunts was a really good ice skater. She used to take me to Branchwood Park when I was little. So I can ice skate, but I cannot roller skate.
Oh,
yes.
I can roller skate, but I can't ice skate. So I wanted to ice skate, and I just really wanted to just be free. Like, I didn't really want to go to college. You know, people sometimes shun at that, like education. I really had no desire to go to college. I really didn't like school, probably because I couldn't really, my mom didn't have any roots, so we moved all over the place. So I went to probably 12 different elementary schools, 4 different junior highs, and 2 high schools.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's how much we moved. So there were no roots, so it was always moving, so I never really got to figure out what it is I wanted to do. And then I met my ex-husband when I was 18, and that was my escape. And I went on the road with him because he was a musician, so I didn't really have to do anything. So finally, now, fast forward to where we are now I finally try to figure out, like, that's what was wrong. I just never really had a clue of who I wanted to be or what I wanted to do because I never had to figure it out. My ex-husband is 9 years older than me, so like going from one adult situation to another. So he was like my parental guidance. I mean, it was fun and everything, but I didn't have to really figure anything out.
So tell me about your journey from that 18-year-old Trey to your journey into the woman you are now.
So this is so deep because my life was just so full of dysfunction. It was like I went from learning from my mother's dysfunction to actually being her. So we have to be really mindful of what we do in front of our children. So I got married when I was 21, and I had my first son when I was 25, and I lived a really, really good life with my ex-husband. He's very lucrative now. He's still doing very well, and I had a home with a swimming pool. I had a nanny. I had like lifestyles of the rich and famous. I had groups up in the Poconos that I was managing. I was doing Making Up the Band before Puffy even thought about it. But I was so young when I got married that I thought I missed out on something. So an old friend came into my life. Somebody saw him and asked for my number, and I committed adultery. I left my husband for this man, and my life was in total chaos.
So tell the audience about that experience.
The experience was, a lot of people are in love with love. I was in love with lust, because lust, we confuse love and lust a lot because it feels the same, because it feels good. I was excited by the excitement of what I missed. I never used to go out or whatever, and it's so nice now to know. Now I'm ready to settle down because I knew I didn't miss anything. So I try to tell young people, enjoy this because you're not going to miss anything. But it was so much chaos, and it was a very toxic relationship because I only knew dysfunction. And my ex-husband, he was married. His mother and father were married until death did them part. And it was 13 children. They had a very normal life. Like, the girls did girl stuff. The mother never drove. I know he gets so tired of me telling this story, but it's relevant. And he was taught to be the protector, the provider, but he wasn't very huggy and nurturing. And I had that in my life from my mom. Even though my mom was an alcoholic and a drug addict, she was very loving. We always had family in the house. It was always card playing. It was always drinking and partying and then fighting, of course, the bad things. So when we got together from our two different lenses, I thought he was a stick in the mud. Like, I thought he was crazy, and he was like 9 years older than me. So I'm like, why is everything such a big deal? I used to have people at the house all the time. He's like, how come every time I come home from work, it's a house full of people? Because that was my normal dysfunction. He's like, no, people sit down at the table and eat dinner. And my son was about, I think maybe 5 or 6. And he wanted to go in his room and eat. And I thought that was fine. But my ex was like, no, we're going to sit at the table and eat, and we're going to say grace. And I'm like, yo, dude, like, you're doing too much. Like,
yeah.
he can go in his room. So we had gotten into like little disagreements, and he never really yelled or screamed or argued, but we got into little disagreements to where I started to notice that maybe something is wrong here. But by then, my ex had, well, he wasn't my ex, an old friend had came into my life and started catering to the things I was telling him that was going on in my house. And we got to be careful, women, when we're telling an outside source what we need, because they're listening and they're catering to you. You think, oh, he knows everything I need. No, you told him. So my ex found out because I was two-waying the person. Remember the two ways?
Yes.
You was tough if you had a two-way. You had some money, because everybody didn't have two ways. I know the young folks don't know what a two-way is, but a two-way is a pager where you can actually text in back and forth, but it didn't have locks on it.
Right.
And one day I went out to meet him, and I left my two-way and my North Face bubble coat in my closet was connected to my bedroom. And it must have been vibrating. So he must have got up and got it. So he called me and said, you need to come home. And I was like, I'm looking for my two-way. I'm like, oh no. And he's like, what is this? And it was a whole bunch of messages. I love you. I was like, it's not that kind of love. It's a friendly kind. But by then it was over. So I took my boys. He still wanted to make it work, but I was just in such dysfunction because my mom lived with my stepfather from the time I was like, I think 5 or 6 years old until he passed away when I was 25. And he was married to somebody else.
Oh my goodness.
And he died in the bed with my mom. And my mom got nothing because he had a wife. But I have the movement hashtag no side chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Because people think that because you're with somebody that you're going to end up on the top. But if somebody's married and they have a wife, you're a side chick. So my mother was a side chick. And everything that she did, I mirrored it. Because I thought that I didn't want to be in the house anymore with him, so you just leave.
Yeah.
I didn't have any communication skills. Like I said, we didn't talk in the house about anything because when my mom was sober, she raised me, and when she was drunk, I raised her. So I had no communication skills, no life skills. So when my mom was raised to survive, so I was always in survival mode, even when I didn't have to be.
Yeah.
Because I had everything I needed. But my mindset and my mentality was, you're in survival mode. If you need this, you do this. Do what's best for you. Don't think about anybody else. And this is what's normal. That over there is not normal. Okay? Having food in the refrigerator, not struggling, not arguing. Somebody not arguing with me was like, you don't care.
Wow.
Okay, so my ex-husband wasn't arguing. So I'm like, he don't care. He don't pay attention to me because I was so used to loud screaming, yelling, fighting, cursing, and then making up.
And dysfunction was your norm, so you
Right.
didn't know that it was that you were even in dysfunction.
No, I didn't.
At the time,
right. I thought that's how you do. You were ride or die. Your man beat you up or yell and scream, and y'all make up. You serve him food. So it's like I'm now probably I'll be 50 in November. Probably at 44. These have been the best 6 years of my life to finally get a grasp of what's normal. And it took me almost 50 years to get to a place of knowing that that's not normal. Still to this day, I have triggers in my relationship with my children. So I try to stay in some type of support group or stay in some type of mastermind or stay around people who, and everybody has a level of dysfunction,
Mm-hmm.
but people who have healthy relationships. And if you're not healthy, then you can't be around me because I can spiral out of control. Because people think we judge drug addicts, right?
Right.
But we all have levels of addiction and dysfunction and self-medicating. Some people don't do it by drinking or smoking crack. Some people do it by eating. Some people do it with sex. Some people do it by gossiping.
Right.
You always gossiping all the time. You have an addiction to gossip because you're trying to hide from yourself. But you'll judge a drug addict, or you'll judge somebody that drinks or somebody that parties. But you're busy on the phone talking about your whole family or all your friends, and you think that you don't have a problem, but you really are the problem. Because you're operating in dysfunction from things that you saw to keep you away from dealing with your issues.
So how did you come to the conclusion and the realization that you were creating your own dysfunction?
I just had to hit rock bottom. You know what I'm saying? You know, I know your story. So when you hit rock bottom, there is nothing else to look at but yourself. And I had to come and realize that my mother did the best she could do with what she had. She grew up in dysfunction. She grew up in the projects in Passaic. Her mom died when she was 15. My grandfather was a womanizer who liked young girls and died from AIDS. So she really didn't know anything about mothering and all of that. So when I hit rock bottom, and I always tell my business because I'm very transparent. When I hit rock bottom and had to go back home to my ex, I had to go back home to my ex-husband because the man I left him for threw me out.
Oh.
Right. Because,
Wow.
Yes, he threw me out because he was cheating with at least 6 names of women, faces, and all of that. Because, you know, I went through all of stalking Facebook and doing all of this craziness because I was dysfunctional. But I had to go back to him because I had no place to go. My family lives in California, Utah, and Washington, Seattle, Washington. So I don't really have anybody here. So I had to call him, and when I called him, I said, you need to come get, because we have 2 children together. I said, you need to come get Bryce because he could hear my voice, like, what's the matter? I said, just come get him, meet me at the mall, because he was picking my other son up from college. So they already have all of these bad emotions for my ex because they say he destroyed our home, but I destroyed my home. I hold myself accountable for my part, and he didn't drag me out or make me do something I didn't want to do. So I had to go back to him, and then he came and he said, just come to my house. And I was like, I can't just come to your house. I don't want to disrupt your life. But he's like, we are friends forever. Just come to my house. And when I got this house, he just said, just sit down. You've been running for like 13 years. He said, just sit down. Go sit by the pool and just pray. Just stop. He said, you just need to stop and spend some time with God. Because I had been really messy, and he saw the whole thing because he was always aware, because my 2 boys were with me, our 2 sons. And I had my youngest son, who is the man who I left him for namesake.
Oh my goodness.
So I had to really humble myself because I had to bring this baby with me from the man that helped me destroy my home. And I was like, yo, what am I doing here? And that's when I knew I just was living a real dysfunctional, reckless life, and I had to figure this out for my children. And I did not leave because of me. And this is us for all the women. We never, ever save ourselves. We're always leaving to save somebody else. And I really left because he wilded out in front of my 14-year-old son. Like, he was calling me names. We had to call the police. And I had to show my son that if you ever act like this, your woman will leave you and never come back because this is abusive. And the only way I could show him that was to never go back. As bad as I wanted to, because it was addiction. Because we had highs and lows and good times and partying, and he did all the dysfunctional things that I grew up on with me because he was dysfunctional. So I had to do this, and I really did it for my son because I said, if I go back, I am teaching him that it's okay to treat a woman like that, and he will forever treat women like that. So I didn't go back really because of him, because had he not did it in front of my son, I would have went back probably this wasn't my first time leaving. Like, I left him, I lived in probably 4 or 5 apartments going back and forth, leaving him, going back, leaving him, going back. But this time I knew that I had to do this for a bigger cause outside of myself, because I was no longer thinking from a selfish place, but from a selfless place for my sons.
So I have a comment and a question.
Yes.
So the comment is, your ex-husband seems like one heck of a man.
Yes, he is.
And you two are still friends to this
yes,
day.
we are.
So kudos to him.
Yes, we co-parent very well.
And, you know, at the end of the day, I think that's so important that despite what happened in the adult's relationship, that they learn to co-parent for the sake of the children. But my question is, did you have a talk with your sons
Yes.
about it?
Yes.
And what was their reaction and what was your response?
Talk about everything. Well, I had to talk about everything with my oldest son when he'll be 25 in October. Oh my God. I sat down and had a talk with him when he was 18. I interviewed him actually. And one thing that hit me was he just loved me through it all. They saved my life so many times I just wanted to die. But I couldn't because of them, the three of them. Well, the two of them at first and the three of them. Like, yo, I gotta get up. They gotta eat. I gotta get up. I gotta push through. They love me. They looking at me, you know, mommy's the greatest. And I just sat with my son. I said, how did all this affect you? And I said, you get to be honest because I want to take my boulders off your back. You've been carrying them around for a long time. And I said, how long did you know that I cheated on your father? He said, I do since I was 9 years old.
Oh, wow.
That's a long time. And he was always angry. Like, he was always mad and stomping and just disrespectful at times. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? First of all, he had to live in a house with the man that I left his father for. And then he had two daughters who I couldn't understand why we couldn't mesh, why they didn't like me. And they liked me because I'm a really good person. And this is what I want to say to people who are listening. People get into situations and they're still good people. They just make bad choices. Because I'm not a bad person, but I couldn't understand why these little girls, because all kids like me, why we couldn't connect. But I had to realize after I got out of my fog that the things they must have heard or seen their mother go through because of me. And I think why are they supposed to like me? But when I finally realized, and they did like me and they tried, but it was always tension or, you know, a barrier where they couldn't really betray their mother. But my son, so I said to him, he said he knew since he was 9. And I was like, I am so sorry. And I have the video one day, I'll show it to you. But the thing that got me was I said, well, out of everything you've seen us go through and everything I've done, how did that make you feel about women? And he looked at me, he said, I don't feel this way now. I said, no, you get to say this. It's okay. He's like, I don't want to hurt your feelings. I said, no, just tell your truth. He said, it didn't make me feel any way about women. It made me not want a woman like you.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That had to be like hurtful as a mom.
It really was, but it helped me to heal. And more than anything, it helped him to heal. So I ask people that question all the time. Would you want your son to marry a man like you? And would you want your daughter to marry a woman like you, or vice versa? Because you have to realize your children are in this relationship. Because a lot of times people talk about side chicks and all these different things, and we judge each other so harshly. And I ask women, how many men have you dated? You know, and they say, I've been with 4 different men, and you brought them around your children. Your children dated 4 men and broke up with 4 men. Mm-hmm. So we have to realize the impact that we're having on our children. So I wanted to break the cycle of dysfunction from the things that I brought into my children's lives based on what I learned from my mom. And
you know, the psychological impact on children. So in my book, I talk about my mom. I was about 5 or 6 years old. She had an affair on my dad, and I was the one who told my dad. And as a result, they broke up.
Right.
And so it caused me to not want to have a voice, to not want to speak up. Wow. I became shy and withdrawn and felt like it was my fault. And the psychological implications on that, for me, becoming a very insecure person, you know, not trusting, all of those things. And what I'm so grateful for is, like you, I married young. I married my husband when I was 21, but I met him when I was 17.
Okay.
He courted me for over a year because I didn't like him at first, because he wasn't that street dude that I was used to, right?
That dysfunction will get you every time.
Yeah, and my husband is 7 years my senior, but before we got married, we had a conversation and asked one another what were our absolute, deal breakers.
Right.
And for me and for him, it was infidelity.
Yeah.
Because I had trust issues with men, trust issues, period. And he knew he had to be my safe place. So, you know, almost 30 years together now, I have never had a woman call my house. My husband has never stayed out late where I didn't know where he was. And so
there's hope for us ladies. There's hope.
I'm thankful to him for that because, you know, he gave me what I needed at the time, and he's just a wonderful man for that. So, you know.
We need to hear these things, that from dysfunction, you can be a functional person because you came from a dysfunctional family as well. And sometimes we think that coming from dysfunction, we're never going to be with a person who's functional. Once we learn that we have to be accountable for where we are every day, and I tell myself this all the time, you are where you are based on your choices. And when I do speaking engagements, you're not your biggest mistake, you're your better choices. So if you're in a bad place right now, just make a better choice, because I do it every day. Now I take time, I stop, I pause before I make a decision, whatever it is, whether it be somebody asks me to keep their kid or a job offer, I stop and say, listen, I need you to give me 48 hours, because I have a shotgun personality. I used to, where you ask me something, I'm on the spot, and then it don't get done, and you disappoint people. But now I have to take time to process what I can take on, what I can't, because that's one of my dysfunctional attributes, to people please. So I have to be mindful when people start asking me to do stuff. Are you doing this from a place of people pleasing? Or are you doing it from an authentic place? Because we have things inside of us where we do things because we want something, and we don't do it on purpose as opportunists. But sometimes it comes along because you want something from somebody. You'll do something and you'll become a manipulator, and you'll say yes because you see an opportunity to get something from it. So I have to be mindful of that, so I don't go back into people pleasing mode, because I don't want this person to leave my life if I say no. If I say no and you leave my life, you're not supposed to be in my life.
Exactly.
And I don't need people anymore like I used to, because I grew up with people in my house. I grew up, my first cousins, we were always together. My aunt and my mom, they were thick as thieves. Two of the most dysfunctional people I know, just thick as thieves. So they taught us. So we always needed people around us. And now when I finally got it, I'm like, I don't like a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? And that was just a mask of being the life of the party. You know, I used to drink and party. Like, now it's like, I don't want to go. Like, people be like, I never see you. I'm like, because I don't want to go. They think, you know, you didn't get invited, or what happened to you, or what, because I didn't want to go. I've been there, done that, and there's really nothing to it. If it's not something that's beneficial to me now, and I don't mean like opportunist, but if it's not something that's beneficial to my spirit, I don't need to be out drinking. I don't need to be hanging out partying. I like to be home.
Yeah, me too. So we have that in common. I want to go back to people pleasing for a second, because both of you and I are children of addicts. Do you think that's a symptom of being a child of an addict?
Yes.
Yeah.
Trying to please out. We were forever, and I know a lot of people who had parents who were addicts, and we were forever trying to get our parents' attention. So trying to please them has taught us that this is the way you get a person to love you. This is the way you get a person to like you. This is the way you get a person to get attention. So people who are dealing with addicted parents, or parents who were addicted or who are no longer here, you have to do the work. You have to look at yourself, because now I used to think, you know, I could make excuses because my mom was an alcoholic, and it took me probably 5 years ago, 5 or 6, that I could say she was a drug addict. I knew she was a drug addict. I knew she smoked crack. But I would say that she was an alcoholic, but it was so hard for me to say that she smoked crack. Like, oh my God, that's like so shameful and so embarrassing. But that's my truth. And I had to face that and be accountable for the fact that I cannot use who she was or how she behaved or how she handled life based on the terrible things that happened to her trauma, for an excuse for me to be a failure.
Yeah.
Because we can do that. We have pig rights. My mother was a crackhead. And what about your mother? So we'll have competitions of who had the worst life if you're around the wrong people.
Exactly.
That's why you got to be smart on who you share with, because you'll be battling back. Well, my mother was alcoholic. Well, my father did this. Or no, when somebody tells you that their mom or their dad was alcoholic, you have to be able to be around people who say you can overcome that. That is not your story.
Exactly.
And I didn't want my story to be my boy's story, because that's where they were going. Like, they were traveling my journey with me, and they were continuing my journey. So I had to take those boulders off their back and say, here, free. You are free to go and live your truth, not mine.
Yeah, break the cycle.
Yes.
Oh, that's powerful.
Listen, we cannot heal from what we don't expose.
Exactly.
And our stories heal people. And I've been listening to Brene Brown. And I've been reading her book, and it is so healing. And I just didn't realize that I still had healing to do. And I've been listening, and I'm like, wow, like I have a lot of shame inside of me. And I feel so free because I started listening to it this week as an audio book. I don't know how I got to it. Actually, I was studying communication, and it just led me there. But you know, God takes you where He wants you to go.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, this whole shame thing of how we live in shame from so many things that happen to us. And then we think we healed. And we think we're living beyond the mask. But we're still dealing with a whole bunch of issues. And we have to forever be in treatment. We say this about drug addicts all the time. We have to forever be in treatment in life. Because somebody is always going to offend us. Something is always going to happen. Somebody's going to die. Your kid is going to tell you something you don't want to hear. Your child is going to have a learning disability. I have a son who's on the spectrum who has autism. He's 10 years old. The one who I had with the man that I left my husband for. So I had to deal with that whole mindset of this was karma for everything I did. And I had to let go of that and say, God is not a punishing God. He will not punish my baby because of something that I did, because people had said that to me. So we got to be careful with the things that people pour into us. Well, you may have autism because you cheated on your ex-husband and you had a baby with him. So that was something that was staying in my brain. And I'm thinking like, yo, I cursed my son? No, that's not how life works.
And that's a heavy load to carry.
Yes. And I had it for a long time until I got clarity on who I am and who God is in my life.
Say that again.
Who I am and who God is in my life. He is not punishing me. He is not punishing my baby. Every time something goes wrong in my life, it's a constant. I don't believe in, a lot of people believe in, you know, karma and all. I don't believe in karma. I believe that there are consequences to my actions. So I do the right thing, not because
and lessons to be learned.
And yes, and lessons to be learned, because you'll keep repeating the same thing if you don't learn the lesson.
I want to switch gears for a little bit, because after you read my book, I don't know if you remember this, you told me it helped you start the process of forgiveness.
Yes. With
some family members. So you want to talk about that?
Yes. You know, forgiveness is the hardest thing. One reason why I believe forgiveness is the hardest thing, because a lot of us think forgiveness means reconciliation, and it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Forgiveness means letting go, and forgiveness is free. Reconciliation requires trust, and trust is earned. But your book allowed me to say, I need to forgive people so that I can heal. I need to forgive people so that I can move on and have the abundant life that's promised to me. Because so many of us, we think, and we're taught to forgive but don't forget. Mm-hmm. And that's a lie.
It is.
You have to forgive and forget, because if you don't forget, then you still have not forgiven the person. And that's one thing about my son, my youngest son's father. I knew that I forgave him, because half the stuff he did I really can't remember unless I'm trying to use, God wants me to use it for a reference for someone else. But I'm like, I don't really have a reason to be mad at him, because I wasn't holding on to it. Because I try to recollect some things that happened, and I can't even remember them because I just forgot about them. I said, you know what, let that go, because it's harboring. This person has a hold on your life. They've moved on. They have a hold on your life because you keep recollecting what happened. So people need to forgive and forget. Stop thinking about those old cliches. Oh, I'm going to forgive, but I'm not going to forget. Then you're going to live in a prison of unforgiveness.
Exactly.
And unforgiveness is why people are depressed and anxious. And my pastor preached on this on Sunday. He said people who have anxiety and depression, a lot of them harbor unforgiveness and anger. And I said, wow, because I really had a lot of issues with depression. And I never thought it was depression until one day when I was trying to help somebody along the journey. I looked up what depression was, and I said, wow, I was depressed for a long time and didn't even know it, because I didn't want to kill myself. So we have to know where we are in life. You know, Dee Marshall's my coach, so she always tells me to locate myself. Like when I'm going through something, she said, you need to locate yourself in this situation. And before I knew that language, I was like, locate myself. She's like, find out where you are in the situation. And then you have to learn that whatever you give or whatever you put out is going to be your consequences. So if you don't forgive somebody, it's only going to affect you because you're going to keep thinking about it over and over and over again. And I had to think about that when I read your book of how hard it has to be to forgive parents, not one parent, but parents who are on drugs,
Yeah.
who have done things to us unconsciously and consciously, but not on purpose, because they were doing the best that they could. And it's so easy to not forgive them, because when we feel entitled to the blame, we can keep it. We really can, because you really did do something to me.
Yeah.
But I would rather not hold on to that because I can. And I'd rather let it go so that I can live free. And so many people run around saying they don't trust people. And somebody said something, but I don't like to say people's names when they watch my lives, but there was a woman that said, the Bible said don't trust anybody. And I always say this in my life where I am now. I trust everybody till they give me a reason not to trust them. Because that's how I live free. I don't trust you if you did something to me, but when you don't trust nobody, you don't trust the chooser.
Right.
You don't trust yourself. I trust me. You know why I trust me? Because I trust the God in me. Because I pray for discernment. And I say, God, listen, you brought this person in my life. Maybe they're going to be here for a day. Maybe they're going to be here for a week. Maybe they're going to be here for the rest of my life. But I trust you while you brought them. So when I see something now, it doesn't take me a million times for somebody to do me wrong to let them go. Okay, you not loyal, so I appreciate you, but you go to the balcony now.
Yeah.
And trust is earned.
And I like that you said that, because I feel the same way. I go into every situation trusting people until they show me not to. Because we are all God's children, and you don't know why God brings people into your life. There's always a reason, right? So if you approach it with anxiety and lack of trust and all these bad feelings, then you're not going to get the blessing, if that's the blessing that God sent for you to have.
You better preach, Pastor Dorinda. You better preach and pass the collection plate right now, girl, because I got some money for you. But trust is one of the hardest things to have once you have dealt with dysfunction and betrayal, because all you know is that you can't trust people's word, that you can't trust this, but you always have to realize that you were coming from a dysfunctional place as well. And I always reflect the mirror back on me to say, how are you behaving in this instance? Because I try to be who I am at all times, but sometimes we get in situations where people are not nice to us, and it makes us want to not be nice to them.
Yeah.
But I try to operate in the mode now of, Trey, you be you, regardless of how the person on the job acts, regardless of how the person in the supermarket acts, regardless of how your man acts. You stay where you are, because you don't know what that person is going through at that moment.
Exactly.
Because every day we're all going through something.
Yeah, that's true. And there's an excerpt in my book where I talk about that. I had an incident with an executive who really yelled at me in the meeting. And I was so angry with him. So when he left the meeting, I stormed in his office and slammed the door. And come to find out, he was struggling.
Right.
So when I let him have it and told him he could not treat me that way, he just broke down and confided that he was struggling.
Right.
Right? And so you never know what people are going through.
Never. But we're so, I'm telling you, judgment is the worst thing that everybody walks around with. We're so quick to judge the way somebody looks. We're so quick to judge their family. We're so quick to judge somebody because to make ourselves feel better. So I always look at this when I'm judging.
Did I say that in my book?
Yes, you did.
Yes, judgment is you trying to make yourself feel better.
Right.
Yes.
So when I'm judging people now, because we all slip into judgment, I know it's a reflection of something internal inside of me that I need to deal with. You know what I'm saying? So if I'm judging somebody's clothes, I'm thinking something somewhere inside of me, you used to dress like that. So why are you bothered by the way somebody dressed when you used to dress like that? So how dare you judge a person from the things that you used to do? But it's so easy to slip into judgment because we don't talk about these things. We don't really talk about the things that we need to talk about. So that's why I'm so glad to be here. I'm so glad for Protected by Purpose, because we don't really talk about anything anymore. We're still sweeping things under the rug like dysfunction and drug addiction and mental health and all these things, but this is what we lived growing up. So if we don't talk about it, we're just on a vicious cycle of hiding things. And we were taught in our homes all our lives that what's done in this house stays in this house. So that is a stain in our brain and a recording that goes on when you get ready to share and be vulnerable. Healing comes from vulnerability. So when you get ready to share, that voice comes in your head from your mother who was an alcoholic, or what are people going to think about me if I say that? What if I share this and they go tell somebody? This is why we have to have these safe conversations out in the open, because there are 1 million people listening right now whose parents were drug addicts and alcoholics. Grown folks. We're a bunch of grown kids running around here scarred from our parents' drug addiction, from our bad choices. The only thing that's good for us, Dorinda, is that we didn't have social media. I said, praise you, God, that you didn't have social media, because I would be in trouble if I was in the cloud. I'm telling you right now, my children would be like, yo, wait a minute, you can't tell me nothing. And this is why we have to pour into our young people to tell them, right now, everything that you're doing is in the cloud. It's going to come back on you. Thank God that it's not going to come back on us. But we need to have these healthy conversations around addiction, around sex addiction, around transgender. All of these things need to be talked about, because everybody's going haywire, because nobody's bringing it to the surface to talk about this is what's healthy, this is what's not healthy, this is dysfunctional, this is where I came from. We have all grown up in different lenses. I'll tell you stories and you'll tell me stories. You'll say we sat down at my house at 8 o'clock to eat dinner. I'll say we didn't sit at the table. So who's right and who's wrong?
Yeah.
Neither one of us. Your family ate at 8. My family never sat at the table. So this is your right and that's my right. That's my wrong and your wrong. So it's like, when we don't have these conversations, especially in relationships, it's a recipe for disaster.
Well, I have to tell you, I'm so glad that you were my first guest, and you brought up the issue of mental illness, being in this Mental Health Awareness Month, because we do need to be more open about these topics and talk about it, because that's the only way we can heal. But I want to go back to the relationships. What advice would you give to anyone who is in a situation of infidelity, whether it be male or female?
First, I want to just say you have to stop. There is no reason for cheating. If you are unhappy in a relationship, just walk away. Because, the truth hurts. It really does. The truth really, really hurts, but you can heal from the truth. Lies damage, and some people don't recover. Some people are not able to recover from being cheated on. You know what I'm saying? Because you lied to them. So they never get to have a free life of trusting themselves anymore. And that was the worst thing that happened to me when my ex cheated on me. He took away my ability to trust me. That was devastating for me, because I didn't trust myself. So I didn't really want to be in a relationship with anybody anymore. I didn't want to trust friends. I'm like, everybody's going to betray me. I would just say that. And for women, side chicks who are listening, this is my movement. I'm so big on this. You are harming a family, because I can't wreck his home if he don't. No, you can. Because as women, we could change the world by simply honor, guarding, and respecting each other's relationships.
Yeah.
We can actually stop the infidelity epidemic if we stop sleeping with each other's men, because men are freely sleeping with us because we won't say no. We blame men all the time. Men are dogs, men cheat, men do this, but they're doing it with one of us. And we know that he has a woman. We're knowingly sleeping with somebody's husband, boyfriend, or fiance. And I tell women all the time, if you are knowingly sleeping with somebody's husband, boyfriend, or fiance, cheating is a form of abuse, and you're an abuser. And if children are involved, you're a child abuser, because you know what you're doing. So, and women will tell me all the time, well, if it wasn't me, it would be somebody else. Don't let it be you. And if it wasn't you, it might not be somebody else, if we all had the same mentality. So for people who are dealing with infidelity right now, husbands and wives, I want to say this to you. You made a commitment, and your marriage can work. It can, because there was a time when you didn't have this breakdown in your marriage.
Yeah.
You have to go back to the beginning to figure out where the breakdown came in, because I tell wives all the time, I'm not blaming you that your husband cheated, because I hold women accountable for their part in infidelity, a side chick and a wife. I'm not blaming you that your husband cheated or slept with anybody, but you are accountable for the breakdown in your relationship, because infidelity happens way after the breakdown of the relationship. Way after the breakdown of the relationship, then people go out and sleep with somebody else. So husbands and wives, you got to get the help that you need. Because at one point you guys loved each other unconditionally.
Yeah.
You got to go back to that place, and it starts with us. As women, when I do my course with them, it's called the Recovery Room, I say go back to who you are before life happened. Because listening to you, I don't want to be in a relationship with you, basically, because you have lost yourself. And once you lose yourself, the other person can't find you either in the home. Like, you used to cook, you used to clean, you used to get dressed up, you used to do your hair. And I'm not saying physical things or everything. You used to be funny, now you don't crack a smile, and you're blaming everybody. I got the kids, my mother is sick. No, we as women, we have to be connected to ourselves forever. That's me. I'm in a relationship right now, but I'm whole by myself. Okay, no, you're not going to steal my joy. I'm not going to be in this house. You're not going to steal my identity because I'm going to wrap myself around you. You are an asset. Okay? Happiness is an inside job.
It is.
You are not responsible for my happiness, but you cannot come and make me miserable either. So we have to remember to stay who we, and people say it's easier said than done. No, it's not. We have to stay who we are in that relationship. We have to be healthy, happy, whole. Nobody wants to come home to a person that's a grouch all of a sudden. And we representatives. But nobody wants to come home to that. So you have to figure out, and this is the best thing for all of us to do in any relationship. Figure out who you are in a relationship.
Okay, so we're at the end of this podcast. I know it went fast. Want to ask you, where can people reach you? Tell us about your work and everything that you do.
You can reach me at TrayKearney.com, TrayKearney.com. All things Tray Kearney. I'm Googleable. I have 2 books out. It's Healing Time, Restoring Hope in Women After Infidelity, and it's Healing Time, Men Hurt Too. And if you need help, I'm a certified life and relationship coach. I help you get from where you are to where you want to be, because a lot of people don't know the difference between a therapist and a life coach. I'm not going to go back and dig in your backyard and all of that stuff, because I'm not qualified to do that. But I can get you from where you are to where you want to be. So again, TrayKearney.com, at Tray Kearney everywhere. And I'm here to help you heal. I call myself a healing agent because God has put me here to help people heal. God is the only person that can heal you, but He has sent some agents, and we're one of them.
Okay, and last question. Based on the Tray Kearney journey of life, what 3 life lessons would you give to the audience?
Truth plus transparency equals healing. Nobody can do anything to you unless you allow them to. And accountability is the key to success.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Tray Kearney. I hope you follow her again on TrayKearney.com. Pick up her books, follow her on social media. And this is the end of your Protected by Purpose podcast, powered by Newark Ironbound Film and Television Studios. And for those of you in the film and television business, please be sure to support the upcoming Newark International Film Festival happening right here in Newark, New Jersey in September. This is Dorinda Walker, your host of Protected by Purpose. Have a blessed and phenomenal day. Thank you.